All right. So as we get into the next part of the segment, is we're talking about, what other areas do we have to worry about is personnel. Personnel is all the folks involved with helping you. It could be staff members, anybody that you're dealing with, that you're trusting with this client information. You have to know that there are safeguards that you need to put in place. So what you need to create, and really is recommended, is some sort of rules of behavior. What are those responsibilities? What's the expected behavior for computer information systems, for handling paper records, for the usage of taxpayer data? So a lot of this is why we built it in this way, is you have all these physical security items. Well, if you don't make some sort of a documented rule of behavior saying, okay, now that I know what I need to do to secure all this stuff after everything I just learned, are you passing that on to staff? Are you describing to them what is expected of them? What do they need to do with this information? So most often you want to have your users, the system users of your computer systems, complete, sign, and submit some sort of acknowledgement indicating that they've read and they understand and they agree to comply with these rules that you've set forward. So this is also, going one step beyond training. This is not just saying, this is what I expect of you. It's saying, okay, you're going to also sign off on this, because sometimes that helps that extra layer of, this is a big deal to me. This isn't just saying, hey, would you just kind of pay attention to where this information is on your desk and, put it away if you're not there. We're saying, no, I'm going to have you sign and acknowledge and read and understand what my rules are and agree to comply with these rules, because this is a much greater, it's a very big deal to me. It's not just a small time thing. You also want to pay attention to your third-party providers, some sort of a service bureau, a contractor, other businesses providing services to your business. Do you have the same expectations of them? Are they meeting that same security requirement standards that we have for your employees? If you're making it apply to your employees, that's phenomenal. That's wonderful. But are you making your contractors do the same thing? So look even through your screening process, your new personnel recruitment process. Maybe as you're getting through those parts of the interview and you're filtering it down to just a few people, you may say, we have rules of behavior here. Are you okay with, lay out some of them? Anyone who's going to have contact with taxpayer information, if you're hiring them into that position, do you do background checks? And, the background screening should be appropriate, of course, for the sensitivity of their assigned position or their duties. But are you doing that? Do you really know if this person is, somebody you should entrust to this data? Have you checked references? Have you gone through the normal steps that you should? And you're like, yeah, I know them, but do you really? And this is where I say, a lot of these courses are built from a lot of my own personal knowledge and history and experiences. And this is one area that, I feel horrible even admitting it, because I've had such bad luck in a very recent time frame of a very bad employee situation where it went south and they were taking information from me. And it's like, what? This is not good. We're going to change everything from this moment. And it was a minor case, but it just opened my eyes. Like, what? I can't just trust anything. And that's that, cautious paranoia at work again. But perform background checks where it's appropriate. Check your references and expect them to adhere to rules of behavior. What about, as well, screening your personnel before granting access? Makes sense. If you're going to grant access to electronic data, paper data, you want to screen them. Make sure that they're suitable for the position that requires a certain amount of confidentiality or trust into what they're looking into. If they have access to taxpayer information, have them sign non-disclosure agreements on the use of that confidential information. You also have to be careful of use of information, because if it's used for any other purpose except preparing a tax return and you don't have authorization from the client as well, that is a very big issue. And that goes back to all of the rules we talked about in Course 1. So managing your personnel, you want to have formal compliance policies. You want to have processes in place that say, this is what we expect, and you have to enforce those policies. And, a lot of these isn't like you're going to just walk out of this class and have all these beautiful things created all instantly. So maybe if you look at your physical security first, and then you tackle, we start tackling some of these other elements, starting to write down the plan, figuring out some contingency plans. Each of these will come into place, but this is one piece of that whole puzzle. You don't want to just ignore that you need to have policies and processes in place for your employees, or it really does no good, especially if you don't enforce them. So you might include in there that includes possible disciplinary action for personnel that don't comply with security policies. This is such a great risk to you. You don't want to just brush it under the rug and be like, yeah, that's okay. No, you have to enforce these policies or they're really no good to you. So you want to control access. And here's something that we do. You want to have the ability to terminate access to information immediately. If the employee's position is terminated, you want to be able to shut that off instantly. So login IDs, passwords. We did this, I think right after tax season, one of our interns, and we shut off control the moment we say, yep, we're the position's done. They tried logging in right after because there was, I don't know, something they wanted to look at, and I was like, actually, you can't log in anymore, and they couldn't. There was no way they could because we turned it off the moment we deemed that was important. Or as access needs change, you need to be able to have the ability to go in and control that access a little bit. Okay, they don't need access to this particular area anymore because their needs have changed. So do you have that capability yourself? Do you have an IT guy that's there that you can be like, hey, I need to, change the access for this particular employee? Or is it that you're not paying attention to that? They could still access it months or years later. You want to be careful on how you grant access to taxpayer information systems. It really should be only for a valid need-to-know basis. Or do they need to work with that data? Or are we allowing access for every person that comes into the office, whether or not that they need to? Maybe they're just a file clerk. Do they really need access to all the same data that everybody else has access to? It needs to be determined by their role, their position in the business and in the company. For terminated employees, it is always, recommended if you can do that exit interview, you want to ensure the employee returns property that allows any access to taxpayer information. So it doesn't matter if they have a company, maybe laptop, certain media that's been supplied to them, keys, definitely, and even to the point that sometimes in some cases we'll go and we'll change the locks if it's that there's any concern there. ID cards, building passes, keys, things that you have, you may want to make sure, did that employee properly include all that at the moment that they were terminated. But you want to also control access. So at that moment, we usually turn off access for the employee. On a 2 weeks notice, here's a little bit of a caution. Sometimes we know, some employees in that, and this is coming from experience again, somebody that gives 2 weeks notice, often if it's not that they are absolutely critical, we'll sometimes go ahead and terminate them right then. And because they kind of get that mindset where they stop caring, or, maybe I'll go in here and tweak this or tweak that. It represents a potential security risk. So this is just, may consider it, and it's going to be different for each case. But a lot of ours, that's what we do. If it's truly not critical, we'll go ahead and say, that's great, but we're just going to go ahead and finish that now. Have them supervised as well when gathering belongings. You don't want them to have an ability to take some sort of a flash drive of data. You want to escort them to an exit. These are security policies that really big companies do, by the way, so there's a reason why they do this. And it may seem really harsh. It may seem cruel and terrible and mean, but it's all for, what are you really doing? Are you paying attention to these little details? Because these are the moments in time where somebody really wanted to, they can harm you. They're ones that know so much more than somebody from the outside. Somebody on the outside wanting to break in and getting, client data, that's a whole lot tougher than somebody who knows exactly where it is and what they can do with it. So all these things are just things you can think about. How do I manage this? And let my experience be a teacher in this case. It's that I feel like when I said it, I've had really rough experiences with employees. I didn't pay attention to the little details. I didn't, terminate them right away. And all these came back to bite me at some point. So that, I guess, cautious paranoia, it all comes for a reason. But now that we have all these stringent procedures in place, we have no more issues anymore. So you just want to look towards that. Provide your staff proper training. You want to train them on the rules of behavior, especially about access and what your expectations are. That non-disclosure is part of it, that they are not to disclose this information to outside parties. How you safeguard taxpayer information, you're going to expect them to do that. If you don't email taxpayer information, you got to know that your employees are not going to email taxpayer information. We've got to make sure that everybody's on board. And one and done, this is not a good idea. You can't just say, here's our policies, congratulations, you're part of the company. Are they going to remember that 6 months or a year down the line? You have to do refresher training periodically because your own needs and security needs may change as time goes on. So do provide training, but also do refresher training periodically.